Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler Season 1, Episode 23. In the quiet room, Wen Ling watched calmly at the boy in front of him with a dull expression. At this moment, the boy currently had his eyes closed, and a dark black spiritual energy fluctuated at his right hand. The spiritual energy seemed to be condensing into a form. Wen Ling stared at the boy and shifted his eyes away after a while. He let out a sigh deep down inside. Mu Chen had already entered this state for a full hour. This time had far surpassed his expectations. Generally speaking, a slightly talented spiritual array master beginner would condense his first seal in half an hour after being exposed to spiritual seal cultivation. The more talented users would form one even more quickly, and now Mu Chen had used an hour, yet he was not able to form his very first spiritual seal. This sensitivity could be described as slow. Therefore, Wen Ling let out a regretful sigh. He naturally heard of the impressive talent that Mu Chen displayed in cultivating spiritual energy. However, it seems that his talents did not extend to being a spiritual array master. Although Wen Ling was regretful, he did not care much. After all, he had seen enough of this situation. There were many geniuses at cultivation who would not be a genius in another area. The war was still fair this way. Time slowly passed while Wen Ling sighed. This continued for another half an hour before Wen Ling finally saw the boy in front of him open his eyes. A spiritual seal still hadn't formed in his hand, which made Wen Ling feel incredulous. It can't be that he was so clumsy that he couldn't even condense a single spiritual seal, right? What happened? Why haven't you formed a single spiritual seal? Or were you distracted? Wen Ling frowned and asked with a severe expression. When Mu Chen heard this, he shook his head awkwardly and said with hesitation, "It's not that I can't condense it, but I don't know if I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Wen Ling was stunned. Mu Chen thought for a moment and stretched out his slender palm. A dark light surged out as his dark black spiritual energy flickered at his fingertips. Then Wen Ling saw how a single spiritual seal slowly emerged. "So you did succeed." Wen Ling let out a sigh of relief when he saw this. But just when he was relieved, he noticed another spiritual seal emerging out of Mu Chen's fingertips. "Two?" Wen Ling could not endure it and raised an eyebrow. However, when Wen Ling's eyebrow was lifted up, the change within Mu Chen's hand did not stop. A black light surged out and another spiritual seal emerged. After the third spiritual seal, another two spiritual seal appeared one after another on Mu Chen's fingertips. 5 spiritual seals. Wen Ling was in a daze as he stared at the 5 dark black spiritual seals at Mu Chen's fingertips. His mind seemed to have blanked out, and a hint of incredulous appeared in his stern eyes. He would have never expected that Mu Chen would be able to condense 5 spiritual seals on his very first attempt. Back when he was learning, it took him a full half a month before he was able to do that. This was because it would be harder to condense one when the amount of spiritual seals increased. Mu Chen watched Wen Ling's dazed expression and scratched his head. The spiritual seal's fluctuations faded disorderly, and he said timidly, "Did I make a mistake?" Although he had not come into contact with spiritual array masters before, he still knew how difficult this profession was. Moreover, he did not feel the slightest difficulty when he condensed the first seal. It felt as if it was a matter of course, and was even smoother than his normal cultivation. This made him slightly shocked, and he doubted whether or not he made a mistake when condensing a spiritual seal. Otherwise, how would it flow this smoothly? Wen Ling finally recovered from his shock, yet his eyes remained fixed on Mu Chen's hand. Then he opened his mouth and said, "Yeah, you probably didn't make a mistake." After he blurted this out, he felt that his voice was a little dried. He immediately let out a dry cough and fully recovered. "It seems that you're quite talented in the area of a spiritual array master." When Mu Chen heard this, he let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that it was correct. "Kuh, although you seem to be quite talented in this area, you should not act arrogant. A true spiritual array master rank is not achieved simply by talent." Wen Ling became strict again and spoke. "What Mr. Wen Ling said is correct." Seeing that Mu Chen received his lesson, Wen Ling peeked at the boy again. He discovered that the boy's eyes were calm, like a quiet lake. Not even the slightest hint of arrogance and pride could be seen within the boy's eyes. This made him let out a praise within his heart. This boy will definitely surpass his father one day and reach an amazing height. the territory lord Mu Feng has an impressive son. Although the amount of spiritual seals you condensed was quite amazing, the spiritual energy was dispersed and was not able to solidify. This is why it faded away this quickly. This kind of spiritual seal cannot be used to arrange a spiritual array. Perhaps because of Mu Chen's respectful and humble learning attitude, Wenling's strict expression softened. He originally only had the attitude of fulfilling a task when Mu Feng asked him to teach Mu Chen about spiritual arrays. But now he showed a tiny bit of sympathy due to Mu Chen's talent and attitude. Mu Chen revealed an understanding appearance and nodded his head. The spiritual energy within those spiritual seals was indeed too dispersed. For the remaining time, you will use all your might to condense spiritual seals. When you can condense these 5 spiritual seals out as you wish, I will teach you a few spiritual arrays for beginners. Come, you should continue to condense them. I will explain the details that you have to pay attention to during the process of condensing spiritual seals. Thank you, Mr. Wenling. An afternoon passed and dusk soon appeared. Yet Wenling still watched the boy, who was immersed in condensing spiritual seals. His face revealed a satisfied expression as he stood up and quietly left. Wenling left the room and headed straight to the rear hall. There he saw Mu Feng, who was discussing about certain affairs with Zhou Ye at the meeting room. Oh ho ho, Mr. Wenling, how did the training go for the boy? Does he have any talent in it? Mu Feng hurriedly asked when he saw Wenling. His face was quite urgent. If Mu Chen did not have any talent in it, wouldn't he have inherited his uselessness? Congratulations, Territory Lord. Wenling cupped his hands and revealed a smile on his strict face. The little lord displays a talent in this area no weaker than his cultivation talent. Based on this speed, he would be able to complete the introductory course within 10 days. When Mu Feng heard this, he let out a sigh of relief and grinned. This boy did not disappoint him and disgrace his mother. Little Mu's talent is really amazing. It seems that it is only a matter of time before he surpasses you. Zhou Ye's face also revealed a soft smile as he spoke to Mu Feng. That's of course. Why don't you see whose son this is? Mu Feng smiled proudly. His appearance seemed to be even happier than when he occasionally obtained the upper hand against the Liu territory. That's right. Did the Liu territory have any movements? Mu Feng turned around and asked. There was a little bit of movement. Our spies have reported back, saying that many experts were gathering in Liu territory. It should be part of the preparations the Liu territory is doing in secret. Zhou Ye replied. Yes. Mu Feng nodded. His eyes narrowed slightly and became extremely sharp. Watch over them carefully. When they take action, we'll also move out as well. We will not let them get the Nine Netherworld Bird. Time passed day after day. Mu Chen spent the majority of his time on condensing spiritual seals. He had recently advanced into spiritual movement stage late phase. Although he could attempt on charging into the spiritual rotation stage by relying on the accumulation elixir and the remaining jaded essence fruit, his rational mind made him give up on this idea. The cultivation right now was to lay down his foundations. If he was too focused on pursuing speed, it may cause more harm than good. Moreover, condensing spiritual seals would allow him to train in his control of spiritual energy, and it would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Under Mu Chen's efforts of training, he managed to completely solidify the 5 spiritual seals within 5 short days. Therefore, it would not disappear instantly due to the uneven distribution of spiritual energy. When Wenling saw Mu Chen successfully solidify 5 spiritual seals, he was shocked, but he did not show it. Furthermore, he began to teach Mu Chen how to arrange a spiritual array. Only when he reached this step, Mu Chen was able to understand just how difficult it was to arrange a spiritual array. Even though he displayed an impressive talent in this area, he still failed numerous times without any results when constructing a tiny spiritual array, which was not even considered a rank 1 array. And even with his repeated failures, Wenling's expression was normal. If Mu Chen was able to successfully arrange a tiny spiritual array after a few short days, then it would undermine the profession of a spiritual array master. Also, if that's the case, there shouldn't be this few spiritual array masters within the northern spiritual realm. However, Mu Chen also began to grasp the methods through his repeated failures, and he finally succeeded on arranging a tiny spiritual array on an afternoon half a month later. In the courtyard, Mu Chen held his breath. 8 spiritual seals emitted light and flashed between his palms. This was the results of his efforts after this period of time. Right now, he was able to simultaneously condense and manipulate 8 spiritual seals. At a nearby location, Wenling firmly fixed his gaze on him. During this time, Mu Chen had always attempted to arrange a tiny spiritual array, but he had not yet succeeded. Although he had always failed, Wenling could feel that Mu Chen was rapidly approaching success after all those failures. This boy had the ability of improving himself constantly through failures. Mu Chen's eyes were calm, and his arms shook slightly in the next instant. The 8 spiritual seals suddenly stormed out from between his palms and disappeared quickly as if it had integrated into the air. The moment the spiritual seals vanished in the air, Wenling's eyes narrowed. He could faintly see the 8 spiritual seals, each occupying a unique position within the air. Rays of light emitted out from the spiritual seals and intersected and connected in a rather complex trajectory. Moreover, when the final ray of light finished the complex connection, Wenling immediately felt the spiritual aura within the world surging more rapidly in this location. Faint light flashed in the air before it quietly faded away. It was impossible to detect without sensing it carefully. Mu Chen fiercely opened his eyes, and a hint of surprise surged out of his black eyes. He succeeded. From nearby, Wenling gently clapped his hands with a satisfied smile on his face. He walked over and said, "Congratulations on successfully arranging your first spiritual array." Mu Chen also let out a delighted smile. The tiny spiritual array in front of him wasn't even considered a rank 1 spiritual array, yet it was enough to get him excited. Wenling took a step forward and entered the range of the tiny spiritual array. He could see the air inside suddenly become distorted, and a tiny light array emerged. Numerous lights bursted out and bounded Wenling's 4 limbs and body like a rope. Not bad. When Wenling saw this, he let out a faint smile. His body trembled and spiritual energy gushed out from his body as it destroyed the numerous binds. It was evident that a tiny spiritual array that didn't even reach rank 1 spiritual array was not something that could shackle him. This tiny spiritual array's name is Spiritual Shackles Array. Although it is not considered a rank 1 spiritual array, it is still quite useful. If your opponent is not careful, it will delay them for a moment. That moment would be your best chance, Wenling explained. Mu Chen nodded his head. He appreciated the effects of this Spiritual Shackles Array. Thus, he spent this period of time studying it. "Mr. Wen, when can I arrange a rank 1 spiritual array?" Mu Chen asked. Although the tiny spiritual array had a bit of use, it was still limited in application. He would only become truly powerful after he was able to arrange a rank 1 spiritual array. Rank 1 spiritual arrays require a minimum of 15 spiritual seals. There is still quite the distance before you reach this step, Wenling said. 15 spiritual seals, huh? Mu Chen nodded slightly. Ever since he condensed 8 seals, he started to feel the difficulty of condensing. It would require a lot of effort if he wanted to reach the level of condensing 15 spiritual seals. Since you have the ability to arrange a tiny spiritual array, then I would let you learn more about the other tiny spiritual arrays during the next period of time. This will help lay down the foundations for you. Although these tiny spiritual arrays are not too complicated, they are still the most basic items. On Wenling's face emerged a rare smile. It seems that he was quite happy regarding Mu Chen's progress. Yes, Mu Chen smiled as he nodded. Ever since he came into contact with spiritual arrays, he found that he was quite interested in it. Could this be passed down through his mother? Thinking about this point, Mu Chen's heart could not help but smile. He was quite curious again. Based on what his father said, his mother had reached an extremely high level of achievement in spiritual arrays. However, he did not know what spiritual array master rank she was. During the next few days, Mu Chen did not let his spiritual energy cultivation slow down while he spent many sleepless nights researching about other tiny spiritual arrays. During this study, he understood more about spiritual arrays, and the amount of spiritual seals he could condense increased. Time passed quickly as Mu Chen was fully immersed in his training. A week later, on this day, Mu Chen sensed that there was a different atmosphere within the Mu estate compared to the previous days. He pondered for a moment before his heart trembled and immediately rushed to the meeting room within the Mu estate. Outside of the meeting room, a few heavy guards were guarding it. However, when the guards noticed Mu Chen, they did not stop him as if they had already received orders earlier. Mu Chen charged straight into the meeting room. Then, he noticed a few figures within the large room. There were 5 figures which were most striking, and they sat inside the hall. Although their body shapes were quite different, they still seemed quite capable. Moreover, the spiritual energy fluctuation that emitted from their bodies was not weak. It's the 5 city lords of the Mu territory. Mu Chen was slightly surprised when he saw the 5 familiar figures. These 5 men were capable generals of his father. They helped him guard the 5 cities within the Mu territory. On most occasions, they were each guarding their own city, but they actually all gathered here today. Mu Feng did not say anything when he noticed Mu Chen entering the room. He only gestured, and Mu Chen came to his side. "Little Lord." The 5 figures all cupped their hands and smiled upon seeing him. "Uncle Duan, why are you still acting so polite towards me?" Mu Chen smiled. The tone he used was also quite amiable. After all, he was quite familiar with these 5 individuals. "Oh ho ho, the little lord has also grown up." The skinny, middle-aged man in the front smiled. The other 4 also revealed a smile, and the originally strained atmosphere loosened up. Mu Feng also smiled and pressed his hands. The room instantly quieted down. "I have roughly told you about the matter of this trip. Our spies have reported back with information that the Lu territory has started to head to the Black Eyrie Swamp. Therefore, we must immediately leave as well." Mu Feng's serious eyes scanned the crowd and said, "This time the matter is extremely important. I will personally lead the team with Zhou Ye. We'll leave 2 of you to guard the Mu territory. As for the remaining 3 individuals, you will also head out together with us." Mu Chen clucked his tongue slightly when he heard this. It seemed that the Mu territory will be sending out all their elites. Looks like Dad valued the Nine Netherworld Bird highly. The Lu territory also views this matter as extremely important. Based on the information we've gotten, Liu Qingtian will personally lead their team. Moreover, Liu Zong and Liu Ming from the Liu territory will go as well, Zhou Ye said. When Mu Chen heard this, he was slightly surprised. The Liu territory's Liu Qingtian and Liu Zong were both spirit stage powerhouses. That Liu Ming would soon advance as well. This lineup was extremely powerful. No wonder Dad would head out together with Uncle Zhou. The 5 city lords also had a serious expression. They could feel some pressure when they thought of the Lu territory's lineup. Then, the skinny middle-aged man called Duan Wei pondered before speaking. "Then, Tai Lang, Chen Xiong and I will head out together with the territory lord. The other 2 will protect the Mu territory. How about this?" Mu Feng nodded and immediately gestured with his hand. "You will each lead a team. The strength must not be less than a spiritual movement stage late phase. Moreover, they must be experienced veterans. We cannot fail this mission." "Yes!" The 5 city lords all let out a solemn cry. Then they immediately grinned and said, "It seems that we'll really fight against the Liu territory this time. It's really been a long time since it's been so refreshing." Mu Feng also let out a faint smile. A fire also surged out from the depths of his eyes. Others may be afraid of the Lu territory, but the Mu territory wasn't. This time, for the Nine Netherworld Bird, he would have to fight against them. Mu Chen stared at the fiery fighting intent that surged up within the meeting room. He also licked his mouth gently. An expectation rose up from within his heart towards the mysterious Nine Netherworld Bird. Such a high-ranked spiritual beast had never appeared in the northern spiritual realm. It was really unknown who would get his hand on this thing. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.